There have been over these last couple of years just a number of different, market or systemic catalysts, which have, created opportunities. And I think for founders operating in this space, you've got to be incredibly dynamic about that.
Welcome to the Healthcare Grind, where we cut through the noise in the healthcare industry to bring you the latest trends, innovations, and insider insights. I'm Jess Hearthcock, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lon Hecht, as we embark on a journey to connect early-stage healthcare companies, payer executives, and investors with the knowledge and perspectives that matter most. Get ready to grind in the fast-paced realm of healthcare innovation. And for more advanced content, go to healthcaregrind.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Grind. Hope everyone's doing well. Once again, Lon Hecht, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jess Hearthcock. Jess, do you want to say hi?
Hey, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an awesome guest, someone that I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last couple of years, Vijay Kedar, who is the CEO of Tomorrow Health, has joined us today. Vijay, do you want to do a quick shout out to the audience?
It's great to be here. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. You know what? We're going to jump right in today. And what I'd love to do, if you don't mind, is if you could give everybody maybe a 30 to 60 second elevator pitch on your business, I think that'd be a great jumping off point.
Very happy to, Lon. Tomorrow Health, our vision is to restore the home, the patient's primary place of care. We provide technology to coordinate across health plans, hospital systems, and provider organizations, and thousands of home-based care providers across the country to streamline, improve, and manage the way that patients and their families receive home-based healthcare. Today, we're fortunate to work with partners supporting over 2 million patients and families across the country for home-based care, and have been able to deliver high-quality outcomes, a 95 NPS patient experience, and meaningful value to our enterprise partners.
That is awesome. Congratulations. That's huge. So Lon knows this about me. I love a founder story. So with that, I feel like you're passionate about what you do. You have great results. Why'd you start it?
Yeah, so as brief background, initially grew up in a big family of physicians, started my career investing in healthcare for a couple of years, and then was on the early team at Oscar Health, a technology forward health insurer based here in New York, wearing a couple of different leadership hats across strategy and finance, beginning and launching and scaling their Texas division and heading up tenets of their clinical strategy. And ultimately, the inspiration for Tomorrow was a personal experience managing my mother's home-based care. About a week after I started my role at Oscar, unfortunately, she was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer. And like many, had a difficult journey through it. Fortunately, is doing very well now and in remission. But along the way, contracted a lung disease from her chemotherapy, spent about 4 months inpatient in the ICU, navigating through that. And stemming from that, came home to what became a year of very intensive home-based healthcare. Everything from 14 liters of oxygen to ostomy and wound care supplies, mobility and respiratory equipment, physical and respiratory therapy. And, admittedly, we just could not have imagined how challenging that process would be to manage and coordinate. We were working across nearly a dozen different home-based care providers due to delays and mismanagement, coordinating across a myriad of different stakeholders, from the home-based care providers to the authorization teams at her insurer, her primary care physician. It took us about 6 weeks to get everything that she needed. And unfortunately, over that time, had to readmit her back to the hospital twice in that first month. And between seeing that personally and at Oscar, seeing many of the same challenges from the health plan's vantage point, it really just opened my eyes that while so many of us, including myself, believe in the vision of home-based care, and certainly at a time when there is a tectonic shift of care towards the home-based setting, that there was a real need for a technology-based solution that could really enhance the way that care was delivered. And ultimately, what we've worked to build is the solution that we wished we had when my mother was sick back several years ago.
I'd love to ask, can you tell us what this actually looks like from beginning to end, like a use case? So I'm a patient working with a payer, I have a physician. Can you kind of tell me what it looks like going through from the beginning to the end? I mean, if there's a way to do that in a minute or two, it'd be great.
Absolutely. I'll start with what the status quo too often is. A patient is being discharged from the hospital. They may have been in for a respiratory condition and need a suite of medical equipment, supplies, and services coming out of that. They may need portable oxygen, nasal cannula, respiratory supplies, potentially even respiratory therapy. Oftentimes, patients shift from being in a very supported environment in a hospital to really being left to navigate that care on their home as soon as they transition out of the four walls. They are either handed a set of prescriptions that says, O2 device on it or CPAP, and they are left to kind of fend for themselves. Many reach out to their insurance companies and download a long PDF list of the relevant providers in the network. They have no discernment over who actually has the capability or the inventory or the capacity to support their needs. There's no visibility or discernment into the quality of care that they are able to deliver. And ultimately, processing that forward requires managing a whole host of what is today very manual workflows between a home-based care supplier or a DME supplier, the insurance company that's authorizing that care, the prescribing or discharging clinician that has certain clinical notes that are necessary to process that order. And a lot of that mismanagement leads to what can be days or weeks-long delays in patients getting the products that they need. And lastly, many of those home-based care providers don't, in some cases, have the incentives or the capabilities to deliver higher quality care, more timely, more reliable care. And that leads to challenges on all sides. Challenges for those suppliers that have to manage a breadth of manual workflows and restricted from delivering higher quality patient care, delays for a discharging physician trying to help a patient get home, certainly increasing cost or challenges for a health plan if that patient is readmitted back to the hospital. And then, of course, most of all, challenges for patients and their families. And so what we do at Tomorrow Health is really leverage purpose-built technology to digitize and streamline each part of that ecosystem to drive results that are more efficient and more reliable. It starts at the referral source level where, today it may take hospitals or physicians 60 to 90 minutes to process an order for DME or home health services. We provide technology to digitize that process that's embedded and integrated with their existing EHRs and systems to cut that down to 3 to 5 minutes, dynamically pulling the data and information that they need and matching that with a high value, high performance provider automatically in that network, leveraging a range of quality and efficiency criteria to do so. We then provide a suite of technology to those home-based care providers to help them automate a lot of the otherwise manual processes in the space and really streamline their processes in a digitized and an efficient way, while also providing them a really robust set of data around their performance to guide them and motivate them to improve. So it's both incentivizing higher quality care and driving that healthy competition dynamic in the market, while also enabling it through better technology that many of these providers, whether they're large nationals or small mom and pops, don't have today. And ultimately, what that does is it dramatically cuts down the time it takes patients to get care. We've been able to reduce that from what can be, 7 to 9 days on average to 24 hours. We've cut that down by 85%. We've cut down the time it takes for clinicians to prescribe care by over 80%. And ultimately, by keeping those patients healthy and safe at home, it's not only good for the patients themselves, but it ultimately saves money for the insurers that are managing their care.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I'm going to go into that next question. You kind of started to touch on it, but can we talk about the business model of Tomorrow Health and maybe how, some startup companies, they go through evolutions? Can you shed a little bit more light on that for us?
Absolutely. Today, we partner both with health plans on one side to really coordinate and manage the suite of benefits and solutions that are being offered to their members from a home-based care standpoint. And to our health plan partners, we drive value in terms of meaningful quality improvement for their members, as well as ultimately saving costs when their members are able to remain healthy and safe at home. And we've been able to drive really meaningful results, an average of a 4 times financial ROI and actuary validated savings with our health plan partners, as well as meaningful improvement in HEDIS and STARS scores, demonstrating some of the quality impact we've been able to drive. And then with our home-based care providers and suppliers, again, we provide them software for a whole host of business enhancement and improvement. And those are really kind of the two core stakeholders that we work with and partner with from an overarching business model standpoint. And in terms of, how that's developed over the years, when we initially started the business, our focus was really on working backwards from the patient journey. And one of our big theses was that it was really important for us to have accountability for the patient outcomes that were being driven. And so we started the business actually delivering care ourselves. We were focused around the critical and life-saving medical equipment and supplies that patients needed and built a tech-enabled supplier with national capabilities to streamline that. And along the way, we built a lot of this core technology that digitized the otherwise opaque and manual and inefficient processes. And we found we were able to drive really outsized results. But what happened along the way is, as we would talk with more health plans about participating in their network, as we talked with more suppliers around the work that we did, we kept hearing demand for what could be an expanded solution from health plans to say, is there any way that you can help manage this whole ecosystem of providers that I work with today to have a single trusted partner that the clinicians and the patients in our network can work with? And similarly, from other home-based care providers and suppliers, the request to license or leverage some of Tomorrow Health's technology. And ultimately, we expanded the business model from being a provider ourselves to being exclusively a platform to support health plans on one side and that today thousands of home-based care providers on the other, to leverage our technology, to leverage our capabilities, to enable third-party providers to deliver higher quality care. And it's enabled us to scale that impact in a really meaningful way while bringing a suite of new capabilities to the market.
So it sounds like you started with DME. Is that still your main focus? What are the other areas are you focused on now, and where do you see it going? I mean, I could see a million places you could go with this. What's your plan?
Our vision has always been to really be that technology layer across home-based healthcare and to be able to coordinate the breadth of care that patients need. And our initial focus around DME and supplies was really resultant from, one, having experienced some of the challenges in that space personally, but also it being one of the more fragmented, more challenged submarkets within home-based care. And what we've seen is, with the capability to build from the ground up, the technology, the back-end data systems, and the workflows to coordinate and manage care in this ecosystem, that it translates very, very well into other segments of home-based care. And so as we think about that broader scope, we're constantly thinking about the opportunity to extend and expand existing capabilities, as well as the opportunity to partner with organizations, providers, and suppliers, and other organizations looking to accomplish similar missions to expand the full scope and breadth of ultimately what we can support for patients and their families.
When did you start the company, Vijay? And kind of how long did the evolution take to get to where you are today? Like, when was that pivotal point where you said, you know what, I want to expand what we do. I want to expand our offerings. And kind of what do you see, to Lon's question earlier, the trajectory? How fast can you get to that next point? Because it feels like you're on a fantastic growth trajectory.
Founded the business in 2019. We came to those learnings pretty quickly. I'll say COVID was a really interesting and unexpected period. We were planning to formally kick off our operations later in 2020, but as soon as the pandemic hit, it just became clear that there was so much need for reliable home-based care. And what we found was that there was a suite of providers out there that were reaching out to us and saying, hey, we don't have the capabilities to process these orders or get our members the care that they need. We engaged with state governments and actually worked with the mayor's office in New York to support aging members, the senior population in New York, that they were performing dedicated health risk assessments on. And for folks who needed certain types of medical equipment and supplies, Tomorrow Health was brought in as a partner to enable that. So we leveraged, a lot of the technology capabilities we had, the vast network that we had put together to drive that. And it became a very, rapid catalyst to engaging a number of these stakeholders in the ecosystem around how some of the capabilities that we had built could really drive value. So it's really in that first year that we began to expand that focus from being a tech-enabled provider to actually being that more comprehensive platform. And as we look forward, I think we just continue to see just a tremendous amount of opportunity in this space. There's just an extraordinary amount of need. As you all know, care is shifting to the home at an absolutely unprecedented rate. It's estimated over $256 billion of care delivery spend will shift to the home in the next 3 years alone, just for Medicare. And so there's just a huge opportunity to service this increasing demand through a platform, through technology, through capabilities that can deliver that in a more coordinated way. And so we see that opportunity dramatically, both in existing verticals that we support today and a huge growth runway ahead of that, but also in expanding that footprint, of which we think there are really near-term opportunities to do, all towards what is our ultimate vision of serving 100 million patients and families.
When can you serve 100 million patients?
As soon as the health plans sign the contracts, Jess, which we know happens quickly.
So it's the fastest sales cycle I've ever been a part of.
Right, completely. I think that's what we'll have to prove out ultimately, is how quickly we can move. And, one of the unique tenets of the model that we've built is it takes time to establish and build those capabilities at the outset, and it's required a tremendous amount of purpose-built technology and operations development to really ingest a lot of the complexity in this space. In the subvertical of DME alone, there's over 3,500 Medicare HCPCS billing codes, over 100,000 product SKUs, variation in plan and benefit designs across thousands of different insurers, creating data models and platforms that can ingest the millions of permutations, the breadth of regulatory specificity required to streamline and process how orders in this space are managed and how patients are ultimately served. And now that a lot of that core infrastructure has been built, the model is very scalable. We've demonstrated the ability to enter new markets and launch new partnerships within a few months, very quickly, activating that. Today, we have a national network with the footprint to work with a range of national health plans as we do today, as well as regional and provider-sponsored organizations. So the model is well poised for scale. We've got a really ambitious roadmap ahead of us, both with existing and new customers and new geographies we're rolling out with over the course of this year and the first half of next year. So I'll get back to you when we can hopefully achieve that goal, but it's certainly what motivates our team day in and day out.
What are your key markets? Where have you found a sweet spot? You mentioned Medicare. Is it MA?
We serve all lines of business. Where we see the biggest opportunity is really around the government business lines. Medicare Advantage, Managed Medicaid, duals. There is just a greater breadth of need. There's a greater breadth of spend from a home-based care standpoint. And there's also a greater breadth of complexity, which I'll say is one of the things that we work with our health plan partners to streamline and to navigate for all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. And so we've demonstrated the ability in those areas to, operate in some of these very highly regulated submarkets and to deliver, meaningful value at a time when, I think health plans of all stars and stripes are certainly in need of that.
Gotcha. Where are you with financing? We do have investors that listen to the podcast. So could you kind of say where you are currently and whether you're active in a money raise right now?
Sure. We're not actively fundraising right now. We have raised around 100 million to date. We're fortunate to be backed and supported by firms including Andreessen Horowitz, Bond Capital, Obvious Ventures, Sound Ventures, and a range of healthcare and technology executives and founders and operators. Our latest round was about 2 years ago. I raised a $60 million Series B led by Bond Capital and Andreessen Growth.
That's great. Another rapid fire question for you. You've been around for a couple of years. You've had a lot of great success. What is a big takeaway that surprised you in your your journey to this point?
And this is for our early stage founders that listen to the podcast. What kind of learnings could you share that would be helpful?
I think so many all learned through making mistakes along the way, for sure. I think it's interesting. In many ways, we lament the slow pace at which healthcare moves and evolves and innovates. And undoubtedly, right, there are certain trends that have persisted over years and decades that we'd all like to see changed. But in many other ways, healthcare moves very fast. And, I think there have been over these last couple of years, just a number of different, market or systemic catalysts, which have, created opportunities. And I think for founders operating in this space, you've got to be incredibly dynamic about that, right? Whether it is, COVID shaking up the whole ecosystem of how we all operate, how we partner together. Dynamics like regulatory shifts, the recent, V28 Medicare Advantage changes, shifting, the way in which many MA insurers operate and think about their business lines and their pricing and their rates and various different types of solutions. And then the advent of new technology paradigms, right? I think we've seen over these last 2 years just the early innings of how generative AI and perhaps, more importantly, advanced large language models can really transform and drive substantial automation across the morass of very manual workflows in this space. And so I think these are all factors that have, dynamically shifted the market in which we operate. And I think a lot of founders and growth stage companies operate. And so I think, it's incumbent upon founders to be really dynamic with the way in which they approach their businesses, they approach their customers. I think the second that I would point to is recognizing when you're facing an intractable problem and what the business needs is just a tremendous amount of grit and persistence. And, we talked about enterprise sales cycles in healthcare are rarely very short and expedient. But, there are certain dynamics where you have to be persistent. You have to, continue engaging and navigating with partners to really unlock what can be tremendous amounts of value and scale. But in other times, it's a sign that you may need to make a shift or an iteration, whether it's in your product or in your approach. And I think discerning whether the right answer is to keep banging against the brick wall and try to break through it or start trying to scale over it is, I think, some of the most pivotal decisions that founders will make along the way. And then the last that I'd point to is just, there's no doubt in healthcare, those of us that operate in healthcare for some time, right? You don't have the luxury to just, build for any one given stakeholder, right? And it's just so important to do that work, to understand, how your business, how your product can align incentives across the multiple stakeholders that will be needed to bring innovation to distribution in healthcare. And, I think that was something that was really important for us to unlock early on, right? Recognizing how the various pain points that were seen by health plans, by hospital systems and provider groups, and by home-based care providers and suppliers could actually be aligned in a way that genuinely drives value for everyone. Oftentimes it means that you have to, build a more comprehensive solution that can deliver that. But that's often what's required in healthcare and in this industry versus in other verticals.
So before we wrap up, I had one question that I wanted to ask, if you don't mind. We have healthcare or health plan executives that are typically listening on here. Is there any kind of thesis that you would like to test out? Is there anywhere you'd like to go that you would like to look for that first initial partner that maybe talking about here could be valuable to you in your business going forward?
I think to the health plan partners and leaders out there, our focus is really on presenting an opportunity to drive value in the short term and in the medium term. And I think, from a near-term standpoint, we certainly hear from folks all the time, those critical catalysts in the drive for savings and in the drive for clear, predictable value, as well as meaningful quality improvement. And that's a really core, tenet of our solutions, being able to drive that 4 times ROI and actuary validated savings, clear, guaranteed savings and value opportunities with also clear opportunities for quality improvement, HEDIS and STARS benefits. I think there's also a bigger opportunity at play as we work with health plan partners and as health plans really think about evolving their care delivery strategies. And, that is, how can you really reorient the way that care is delivered to have the home operate not just as a post-acute setting of care, as it's too often defined today, but also as a pre-acute setting of care? And what are the ways in which you can work with partners that enable and facilitate that in ways that may be different from, how traditional clinical workflows work today, how incentives may be applied on your suite of network providers today? We believe, those types of opportunities will yield step function value for health plans as they think about total cost of care over time, as well as certainly for patients and providers in the ecosystem. And so, having been in that seat of managing a health plan P&L, I certainly appreciate, the near term, quarterly or annual needs to balance the budget to drive value, and the value that partners that can deliver that can yield. I found that some of our strongest partners were those that could deliver that short-term value and really help us strategically orient in a new way that could yield meaningful benefits over time. And we're certainly excited by the opportunity to continue working with national, regional, and provider-sponsored plans across the country to really bring that to life.
Terrific. Before we wrap up, Vijay, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you? And one other thing I'll mention is, if you have a link to that study that you mentioned and want to share that with me, I could maybe put that link in our podcast notes or potentially on YouTube if you'd like. But what's the best way for folks to get in touch?
Folks can reach out directly. My email is vijay@tomorrowhealth.com, and would love to hear from folks, whether it is health plan partners, whether it's other founders, whether it's other builders and operators that are interested in this space. Our team is growing quickly. We're hiring across the board: technology, operations, business development, a range of roles. And so for folks that are also energized by our mission to restore the home as a patient's primary place of care, we'd love to have you come and join us.
Well, thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Lon, Jess, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Healthcare Grind. If you'd like to go for more advanced content, you can go to healthcaregrind.com, and please subscribe where you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, Vijay. It was great having you on.
As we wrap up this episode of the Healthcare Grind, we want to thank you, our incredible audience, for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback fuels our grind. For more exclusive content and updates, visit our website, healthcaregrind.com. Until next time, keep grinding, stay informed, and lead the charge in shaping the future of healthcare. This is Jess and Lon signing off from the Healthcare Grind.